So here we got True Spring and Light Spring. And because True Spring is a medium intensity, so it's not as contrasting as, say, Bright Spring was, the difference between intensity is a little bit less. Yeah. So there's not a big jump. But of course, this is possibly a little bit more pigmented than this. So let's see if the medium intensity with a little bit of extra pigment, does that work better, or what do we think? You know, let's see if this is helpful for us or not. Okay, so here's the two colors. That's Light Spring. Yeah, this is a more in line darkness level. Yes, so as you can see, this is kind of close to grayscale, and this is somewhere along, you know, the red line, possibly here maybe, that sort of range. So it is still a red drape, but just a lot less pigmented, a lot less colored. So with springs we had them sort of peachier, reddier here, you know, but we also get them grayer too, like in here. So reconstruct this. Okay, let's see what we get. So shall we start with dark and bright?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this. Dark autumn, that's it. And then a bright spring. Okay. So dark autumn and bright spring, you can kind of see that they're very similar, right? Like look at the reds and the blues. The greens are different. Autumn has a lot more yellowier greens in it. It does have pineier colors as well, but so that's the different looking ones here. But look at the greens and the blues. They're very, very similar. This is just obviously a little bit darker, less kind of clear in the pigment department. So we have modified it from pure pigment, a little bit more muted. Let's see how they do against each other, shall we? Okay.
Yeah, the reds look really similar.
So this is really useful when we go this way, because then we're literally comparing them on their brightness level. Okay, so that's the bright spring. That's the dark autumn. I'm going to flip it a few times, so the closer we're drawing to sort of like where we're going to be, obviously the differences will get less and less and less, so we're probably not going to see so much redness anymore now that we eliminated all the cool stuff that was doing that. So we might have to start looking for different types of differences, you know, that we've seen before, because we're now switching from comparing them on temperature, we're now switching to comparing them on their intensity, so they're matching their temperature now. But can you see that, I mean, they are very different looking still. So this one is still adding quite a lot of texture to the face. I feel like it's a muddier kind of skin color, maybe a pinch more reddish than here, can you see?
Yeah.
And then this skin here just feels so much more smooth, fresh, kind of naturally radiant, and just really kind of like even looking. Here I'm still seeing a lot of texture, can you see, coming up, a little bit more tired. Yeah, if you shift your face slightly, then we can do a sort of side track, but look how much smoother and cleaner that is, right?
It's a lot better.
Yeah, that one is just allowing more redness to sit on the face, just more texture to kind of come to the surface, and maybe still a little bit of graying. And these were our better colors, the least graying ones from before, but this is definitely doing a better job. Okay, let's check our greens. Okay. This is the spring one on the top. So this is kind of like back to those fruity type of colors. This is the autumn one, very similar kind of difference to before. It does allow a little bit more redness to the surface, a little bit more texture to the surface, more disconnection as well with you. Just much more smooth and clear looking on the skin. And then if you turn your face slightly, then we can basically do a sort of skin tone continuity test from the neck, from the temples round. And compare it to here, but a lot more textured, can you see?
Yeah. I see some yellows as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that one is just clearing it up, as if by magic, right? You know?
Yeah.
So imagine like you wake up in the morning, you throw on this t-shirt and like, oh, my skin looks great today, you know? Versus like next morning I was like, I was looking so good yesterday, what happened? Maybe it's the peanuts that you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people can just sort of like not think that it's the color that's doing some kind of reaction on the skin, you know? You might think, oh, I'm breaking out, you know, but the next day, oh, that cream's really working, you know? You know, and it could be just you're wearing different clothes.
Yeah, that thought would have never occurred to me before, but yeah, it really can be the clothes.
Yeah, one tip I normally say to people is that if you're putting on makeup, put it on in the clothes that you're going to be wearing. Because imagine, say, your pajamas are this color, so you are now fixing your imperfections, let's say, according to the optical illusions that this color is causing on your face. So you might be putting a heavier layer of foundation or something because you kind of want to counteract the unevenness. You might be putting a lot more concealer, maybe more blusher because you want to bring the color back. Whereas here, you know, you already have like a lot of glow. You don't need highlighting here. You probably maybe a tinted moisturizer or something is plenty enough because there's nothing to even, you know. So you might be completely changing how you apply the makeup on. So imagine you put on your pajamas, put a bunch of makeup on, and then you get your clothes on and like suddenly you look too made up, you know, like too heavy, heavy looking makeup. All the other way around, this is your pajamas, you know, and like, oh, I'm looking great. Pat, pat, pat a little bit, and then you put on the clothes and then suddenly you feel kind of, you know, a little pale or, you know, a little bit more sort of colorless, and you catch yourself in a reflection like, oh, I don't look great, you know. So yeah, wear the clothes that you're going to be wearing when you put makeup on so that you can adjust any kind of optical illusions according to that. So if your dressing gown is the wrong season, you know.
That's a really good tip.
Yeah, whereas this one is just so smooth and evening, that's nice. And then it's just the blues left. They're very similar again, like the reds. Okay, see? Lighter, darker version of the same kind of thing. Same wavelength. Okay, this is the spring one on the top. That's the autumn one. Same exact story, right? The mature, draggy, textured, slightly yellowed even. Versus the cleaner, smoother, definitely more radiant, more even. Then here it's just the texture just pops on. The darkness level wants to offer you something, you know, but it's just not evening the skin enough, you know. So you're better off going with something clear, but then using that type of tonality to select the dark colors from, you know. So it's just possible that even from dark tones, it just needs to be less gloomy, you know, less muted. Okay, so bright spring versus dark autumn. The spring one is a better direction, it appears. Okay. Let's see if the pen will help us. Ooh,
oh yeah, that's again.
I think after the session I'm going to be ordering one. Okay, so let's do true autumn, true spring. And that. So, exercise is the same, and again the differences are very similar. That's the spring, that's the autumn set, and as you can see, the same type of colors, same type of wavelengths of light, but just reflected at different intensities. These are a lot more clearer, you know, not as muted as these. Let's see who's going to give you the right ones. Nice.
Really similar.
Yeah, and this just, so the kind of difference between spring and autumn that I often say to clients who are spring and autumn is that the way to kind of look at a color and sort of like help yourself know, oh, is it the right kind of peach or right kind of teal, is that the springy colors always feel a bit more like fresh food, you know, like uncooked, like this is like, you know, a papaya or something, whereas the autumny colors, even when they're very similar, they still have a sort of spicy or cooked or something, you know, like a different kind of feel to them, you know. So like that sort of freshness is kind of like preserved into a little bit more toasty kind of look, you know, it just becomes a little bit more earthy that way. So yeah, I think that's kind of like my way of checking, is it the spring?
Yeah.
That's the spring one on the top. Very nice.
I really like that one.
Yeah. Last time we put it on, I was like, ooh. I think it's gonna be a strong contender. Okay, let's see how it compares to the autumn one. Yeah, same what we've seen before. That sort of graying almost on the skin. Can you see? Yeah, that's clearing it. Not bad. Like it's not pulling the redness like the dark autumn colors did. So that's nice. But it's definitely doing a sort of tint, like almost like an oily, slightly muddy kind of texture. Like it doesn't look like, oh yeah, I just exfoliated my skin. You can't say that because I'd be like, really? It doesn't look it, right? Whereas like you come and meet me and like, oh, I just been to to see my clinician, you know, I just had a face, you know, treatment. I'd be like, oh yeah, your skin is glowing, you know. But if you said that here, I'd be like, maybe don't go back to that place, you know. And you could have literally just been, but if you're wearing this, I would be like, I'm not sure. Not sure it did anything. Yeah, so that's how big a difference it can make.
Very big, yeah.
Okay, let's see the greens. Warm tone, both of them, but that's the sort of cleaner, you know, like almost like grass color, you know, and then this is like really, really deeper, you know. I'm just trying to think, because even this is even too kind of muted for moss, you know, like even moss is kind of a bit more fresh looking, you know, but this is kind of more mossy, you know. Yeah. But you see what I mean about the sort of fresh, like uncooked and versus the sort of ready cooked, you know, type thing.
Quite easy to spot spring, but autumn's harder to recognise, I think.
Okay, that's nice. Okay, not bad, but that like a little bit more texture on the skin, and it's almost a little heavy feeling in your contacts. Can you see? Like it doesn't feel like, ooh, you know, like such a nice piece of garment. You know, it just feels a little bit mature, a little bit kind of almost costumey in a way, you know? Like you're reserving yourself, or it's like a withdrawal kind of thing. Oh yeah, it's just like really open, you know, really approachable. That's the kind of what do you call it, like an impression that you give out. But also look how radiant the skin looks here versus here. It's kind of like stealing a little bit of that glow. Can you see?
Yeah.
And then this one is just putting it back on. It's fun stuff, right?
It is. I really like spring.
Well, I think spring likes you.
Yeah.
Okay, so the blues are the last from this set. Again, same wavelength, different intensities, the way they reflect. Lovely. Not bad, but a bit red, a bit heavy, that costumey look. Definitely textured skin, a bit tinted in the yellow or something. That's much more clean and natural looking. Not bad, but just kind of dragging the features down a little. Can you see?
Yeah, like it's not awful.
No,
like
no.
Some of the ones earlier were a lot worse. But yeah, it's still not good.
Yeah, well, we eliminated all the cool ones that were like pulling all this red straight onto the front of your face.
Yeah, the bright ones definitely.
Yeah, it just feels kind of more effortless, right? Like, oh, I'm flowing.
Yeah.
Okay, Well, I think we can start to see a pattern now, right? Like, I think we're really getting an idea where we're heading. So again, the autumn was, it was nice, but it was just a little sort of like textured on the skin again. I would say a little bit muddier, like on some of the colors, you know, especially the darker ones, we just felt like, oh no, she needs to exfoliate, you know. Whereas this one definitely, you know, the spring set looked a lot more like, oh yeah, her skin is glowing, you know, what is she doing to it, you know? So that's good, right? You want that skin without having to do all the hard work.
Have to put makeup on. It'd be nice.
Yeah, and just look good, you know.
Yeah.
Just walk on the street or anywhere, you know. And be like, how did she do it? Okay, true autumn is gone. Ooh, well, the pencil doesn't agree. Okay, we're imagining that line. So the last autumn in play is the soft autumn, which is possibly the weakest one of the autumns, because I remember the softs were kind of a little bit hard for us to reconcile in between, because there was just a lot going on with the greyness. But let's compare soft autumn to light spring. Give it one final chance. If it's not pulling its weight, then that's all the autumn's gone. Soft autumn, light spring. So again, very similar. As you can see, both of these are lightened down by summer. That's why they have this kind of heathery feel to them. They're both warm toned. This is the clearer set because it's got obviously spring as the base, and this is the slightly more muted set because it's got autumn as the base, but they both have this sort of like feathery, heathery kind of feel to them because summer has said something, you know. It said, ooh, why don't we like smooth you a little bit, you know? Because spring colors are normally like, ooh, juicy, you know. Yeah. And autumn colors are like, ooh, toasty, like let's cook spices, you know. But none of these are feeling like their true sort of parent season or parent category, because summer came and said, just calm down a bit, guys, you know. You don't need to be so intense, you know, in their own ways. But otherwise they're very similar, you know, looking. This is just a clearer looking set, and this is the little bit more grey looking set. This will be interesting. So a different type of peaches. That's the spring one. So we're seeing that sort of yellowy tint come onto the face, a bit more texture. Maybe it's a bit draggy still, dragging you down. That's definitely clearer. It feels kind of light, so I'm thinking this is possibly the sort of the weakest of the springs, because it feels like you kind of are asking for a little bit more definition, you know. It's sort of not quite sort of shading enough underneath the skin. I mean, this is quite a see-through drape, but even if I fold it double, it's still a little bit on the light side. It's better. It's a little bit better defining, but still a little bit on the light side. But comparing it to here, this is still the textured look, that sort of unclean skin, right? Because if you came and see me, let's say we were meeting up or something, and this is how you look, I would be thinking, oh, you know, she's been jogging, or she had a long, you know, like it doesn't feel like, it feels like there's something on your, you know, like you need to cleanse your skin. Whereas here, suddenly when we got the spring drapes on, it just feels like, oh yeah, she just came from the shower or something, you know. It just has that sort of cleaner, fresher type of appearance than here, which is a little bit more oily, shiny, textury. Yeah. Okay, let's check the greens. Okay, so bigger distance between the two. Of course, spring is very like luminous looking. But again here, even though it's evening the skin, so it's really nice and glowy for the skin, it's losing a little bit of your chin, can you see? Yeah. So I'm just making a mental note so that even that this is good for the skin, I wish that we could sculpture a little bit better. So I'm thinking ahead for the other springs, but Because here we're not losing your chin, but it's also texturing a little bit too much on your face. That sort of mature look, the unclean skin versus that. But this one needs a little bit more defining. But we are comparing them on their intensity level, so we're seeing whether you need more clarity. So we're not comparing them on the darkness level right now, you know, we're just comparing an intensity, and this, the clarity of this is definitely more in line with your coloration than here, where we do get little kind of separated out areas, and just a bit more sort of, I don't know, that sort of muddy look, isn't it? A little bit more stuffy, but not bad colors, right? We're already getting like quite close, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do the blues. I remember like earlier on we were just seeing all this redness from like winter and all these other groups. The stern look is gone.
Yeah.
You can have your face back. Okay, so that's the spring one on the top. That's the autumn one. This is not bad, but again, texturing the skin more, a bit more red even. That's sort of shiny, unclean, cleansable skin. This is much more even straight away. It's needing the sculpting because it's trying to push color to kind of give you some shadow. Can you see? So it's like, oh, I don't have darkness, but look, why don't you have some color? It's because it's going to look a little bit glowy, you know? So it wants to get there. It's just sort of like, falling a little bit short in terms of darkness, you know? But it's nice and clean on the clarity. So here we're just a little bit more textured. That's sort of all the look as well, tired, end of the day, you know. This doesn't feel like it's the end of the day. It's like, oh yeah, I'm ready, let's do more. Cool. Well, with that, autumn is out.
Yeah.
So you're definitely a spring chick.
Yay.
Now we just have to figure out which is spring.
Yeah, I think I wanted to be spring or summer, something like
season-wise.
That I know it's not necessarily related, but
but you like the idea.
So, yeah.
Well, that's a nice coincidence, because sometimes I get clients, you know, they sort of have a personality, let's say a spring personality, but let's say there's some kind of a summer. Like I recently had a client, and I think she really wanted to be a bright spring. She was a soft summer. And sort of like the way she managed it was that she was kind of wearing slightly more muted colors than the bright spring, so almost like dark autumn category, just to kind of get to her softness level in a way, you know. But that's how she was kind of bringing out that sort of springy feel in her. So for her it was a sort of almost like a shocker, you know, that like, oh no,
if you want to be
spring,
something,
you know, like what am I gonna do? But no, she could see it, you know, and it like once you see it, it's like you kind of know, and your heart knows, you know, and you want that, you know, that's exactly what you want. You want your clean skin and radiance, and you know, that sort of approachable, effortless kind of impression, you know, that's basically what we're after.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, when you had an idea about yourself before,
then it's harder to accept.
Yeah. Okay. So we're down to the last basically group, which is all the springs. My feeling is that light spring is a little bit too light. I don't think it can support your depth enough. So for me, it's going to be really coming down between bright spring and true spring. I don't know really which one. I don't know. Have you got is your heart singing better with one? I think we'll just have to see, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got no idea. Maybe bright spring? But I don't know.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah.
They both looked good. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'm thinking we can possibly lose light spring the easiest. Yeah. So let's compare maybe bright spring to light spring or something like that, you know, because they're both the same temperature, you know. And then see if bright spring does win, and then it can go up with our finalists.